Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm Jeff Howard, and I'm very honored to have Peter Menchini with me today. Hey, Peter.
Hello.
All right, so Peter and I just had what I consider an excellent talk. It's the podcast before this one, so if you're listening to this and you didn't listen to the interview, listen to the episode before this one, because Peter shared all about his work and his film, When Mama and Me Lived Outside, but more than just that. But I want to add that When Mama and Me Lived Outside was at Film Invasion Los Angeles in 2023, which is a festival that I'm the festival runner of. It won Best Short Film Animation, and it won Outstanding Screenplay for Animation, which was Tiny Gray Garcia's. The script of the film was actually her book, When Mama and Me Lived Outside, that people should seek out. But I want you all to listen to that interview, the podcast before this one, because this podcast is just going to be about something else. It's going to be Peter answering the Discover Indie Film 4 questions, which is just a silly thing that got cooked up in 2017. It's name 3 films that you love, name an underrated film, name an overrated film, that's the fun one, and then name a lesser known film that people should seek out. And Peter, would you like to share some of your favorite films?
Sure. It's much more like films I appreciate because they really taught me something, like Closely Watched Trains really had an impact with me about doing stories that weren't like Hollywood style. And it's a political film. It's from the Czech Spring. It is a coming of age film. It is about sex and why humans have sex and how you're supposed to have sex. And it's also about how you're supposed to appreciate life and what are things worth. So it's basically the Nazis are, controlling this Czech town, and the Czech people are trying to have their daily lives. And I just love that film. It just never stopped resonating with me. Some people think it's a little anachronistic now. Any film about sex from the 60s is going to have some, that's not really the case anymore kind of thing, or, that was kind of a male perspective kind of thing. The most extreme version of that might be MASH, which is completely watchable as a film now because it's so amazingly misogynistic and really evil in so many ways. So really, I just keep coming back to that. And then every film has impacted me. Another film I saw as a teenager, just to see a film that was just going to be about images like Koyaanisqatsi it was just really nice that they decided to do that. There are some great musicals, like the modern music video invented by the Beatles with A Hard Day's Night. The idea of how to write a script, because what they did to write the script for A Hard Day's Night was they took the Beatles as they really are if they never got cranky, and made a real true story about what it would be like with them. And that's one reason why celebrity is a trap and became a trap for the Beatles, is because it's really them if they never got cranky, but they're just human beings. So of course they get cranky sometimes. If they're always on, if they're always witty, then A Hard Day's Night is actually kind of realism about the Beatles in a certain way, right? So I really appreciate that, and just appreciate what I learned from that. And there's so many other films I saw that really taught me to appreciate this or that. There, a lot of the YouTube documentaries that I'm watching now, I'm saying, oh, that's a real interesting solution to communicating under these. So that's fine. As far as overrated, I would just, as we were saying before the podcast, I think that there are filmmakers who want you to think, and there are filmmakers who want to tell you what to think. And I think Brian De Palma is really talented. And I think Steven Spielberg is a genius. But they're both really, really good at manipulating your emotions and telling you what you should be thinking and feeling. So they're ultimately propagandists. And it's funny that people don't think of them as political when they're obviously political filmmakers to me because they're propagandists, because they tell you what to think and feel. And that is the main criterion for me. And that whole ending of Saving Private Ryan, where they're old men and they go back to the graveyard, like, why was that there at all? They could have just ended the film, things like that. But another favorite filmmaker would be local Craig Baldwin, who does only found footage stuff. And he just did this wonderful film called Rocket Kit Congo Kit that I saw in the 80s that just blew my mind because it the film was obviously had a perspective that it was against everything that it was openly saying it was for. It was undermining everything that it was presenting as it presented it. And it was just so beautiful as a political film, as a statement. And he did similar with another film called Tribulation 99, which uh, pretends to be exposing the aliens and their UFOs that are about to invade the Earth, but really has a very different agenda. So I'd have to say Craig Baldwin is a favorite there for me. And what were some of the other questions?
Well, actually, so I'm going to assign the Craig Baldwin answer, which I love too. That was your lesser known that people should seek out.
Oh yeah, Craig Baldwin.
And overrated you handled with De Palma and Spielberg, which before we started recording, I shared with you that I am very much on board with you about their work, as popular as it is. So actually, the only one that remains unanswered is a film that you feel is underrated.
Um, yeah, there's always something that I'm saying, this is better than, and I can't think of anything now, but I do remember I went and saw Blade Runner when it first came out and was like, it was getting very mixed reviews, and mixed reviews is a euphemism for bad reviews. And I said, this is a great film, except for the stupid narration. Every time the film's getting good, you hear uh, Harrison Ford narrating, like, at the end when the android Rutger Hauer dies, the narration over says, I don't know why he let me live. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So you haven't been watching the movie. But then they re-released the film many times, and each one had no narration because everybody agreed with me. And so now everyone agrees that Blade Runner is a classic film, and it is. But yeah, they made them put the narration in the original version, which really messed it up.
No, the original version. I actually, yeah, I've always loved that film, and I've seen every version. When I was, I believe in the late 80s, they released a phony director's cut where
Uh,
all they did, the studio released it without the narration and with the dumb tag at the end saying that, oh, she's going to live forever. She's the
yeah,
one android that'll live forever or whatever. Uh, they
yeah,
released that version, and I thought that was the best version I ever saw in a theater.
yeah.
And then Ridley saw that and said, "Well, I'm going to do the real director's cut." And then he threw in like unicorns at the end and shit from his film Legend, and it was kind of actually I kind of like that one version, but
Yeah.
yes, it is such a great film, and it is so painful that it had that terrible narration. I remember the reviews of it.
Yeah.
We're probably almost the same age, but I remember when it came out and everyone was shitting on it, and I was
Yeah.
like, and then my friends and I kind of loved it as sci-fi nerds, and I was like, I guess they just couldn't handle that he wasn't Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like that was it. It was like Han Solo is dark and mean in this film. He's not a good guy.
It's film noir.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
film
exactly. It's
noir.
noir, and they just couldn't accept that the happy-go-lucky space pirate is now like hunting down uh people who are clearly sentient and don't deserve to be hunted.
I think Apocalypse Now Redux is another film that is just excellent. But the original versions, and I saw the 70 millimeter print when it came out, and somewhere in my archives I have because there were no credits. You had a little pamphlet they gave you, a little booklet, and I still have that. Um, and yeah, that was really interesting movie. But the Redux version like solves all the problems in that movie, and I really love Apocalypse Now Redux. And I really love, by the way, here's something not necessarily popular. I really love that there's no CGI explosions because like for Tiny when the Black Panther movie came out, I helped finance taking the kids to the theater to see it. Big deal it was. But when he jumps out of some kind of thing and lands on a car and twists like it's ballet and falls perfectly, well, that was CGI, so I am not impressed at all. But those explosions in Apocalypse Now, when they're blowing up the bridge and everything, those were all real. And those involved a certain amount of danger. And it just, the CGI stuff really is one of my least favorite things, especially how it's used. It could certainly be used well. But yeah, how it's used, how it's overused, how it's depended on, I think audiences are pretty bored with it now too.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, for a long time, the spectacularness of it because it was new. But yeah, now it's in the end, well, I always said the difference between the first Star Wars film, which I always call Star Wars, and then Empire Strikes Back was in the first one, they wrote a story and the effects served the story. And then for every film ever since, they had effects ideas and scenes, and then they wrote a story to use that technology. And
Another, yeah,
like it's,
another film
it's
that people,
wasting my time.
yeah, another film that people should see is Hidden Fortress by Akira Kurosawa because Lucas admits he got all the characters, some of the situations, and all the characters. So these two comedy relief farmers become two comedy relief robots, and the samurai warlord becomes Han Solo. There is a grouchy princess, but she has far better motivation. She's a much more well fleshed out character. Um, Sorry, Princess Leia says something hella racist in the first Star Wars movie. She says, "Get this walking carpet out of my way," talking about Chewbacca as an object, and that's just like not acceptable to me. But the princess was pretty obnoxious in Hidden Fortress, but you really knew why she was, and you really didn't care, and you liked her anyways because what she'd been through, and you understood that she had to be the leader of her clan, even though she's a woman, and women cannot be leader of the clan, and so her family raised her as a boy, and there's all this conflict and all this stuff going on.
No, we
Very good
can't.
film.
We could probably talk another half hour about the subtle racism and overt sexism in that Star Wars universe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But needless to say, poor Carrie Fisher. The funniest thing is that she said, "Why am I not wearing a bra?" And George Lucas said, "Oh, there's no bras in outer space."
He said there's no jiggling in outer space.
just the funniest thing in the world is, but it was of its time. But
Yeah, yeah, it's the 70s.
they in my mind, they finally got a heroine correct in that universe with Rogue One. But
Yeah,
it took until Rogue One to have a female character that wasn't unworthy.
right, right. In the 70s, it was clear that the kind of people like there's a book about this, but basically, feminism is when women are shouting at men. So in the first Indiana Jones movie, Karen Allen just spends the whole movie shouting at
A
her.
strong woman, yeah.
Yeah, so they really didn't know what they were doing. They had no clue how to do a real character, a real person, and because they were afraid of women, they just made the women yell. And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
really,
Instead of
yeah.
being her own person,
Right.
she's supporting him while criticizing him, and that was a step, but
Yeah.
better than the damsel in distress. But then they always become a damsel in distress anyway. I guess that was Princess Leia's job, actually, was to be the damsel in distress to be rescued. But anyway,
Yeah. Shouldn't make any
it's
political decisions in that movie like the princess in Hidden Fortress does. So that's another thing I like about Hidden Fortress. Anyways, I'm talking too much. You need to get on with your stuff.
All good. All good. Well, we got through all 4 questions. Wonderfully answered. Amusing. I never went back. I admit you might have inspired me to watch Apocalypse Now Redux, because that's one of the films that I did love as a teen and then grew to not love when I saw it a bit older. And so I just honestly don't go back to the Coppola stuff either. But maybe I should give Redux a look.
The Conversation, his first feature film, is an amazing film.
Yeah.
Amazing and unrecognized because overshadowed by The Godfather and all of his other films. But The Conversation is a wonderful film with Gene Hackman.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I will wrap us up by saying thank you, Peter Menchini, for taking the time to do this. There will be clickable links in the show notes that center around Peter and his work and some organizations that were involved in the film When Mom and Me Lived Outside, or with Tiny Gray Garcia, who wrote the book that film was based on. That's the film that I met Peter through at Film Invasion Los Angeles back in 2023. So I've now mentioned too many things at once, so I'll try to get on course. Thank you for listening to the Discover Indie Film Podcast. You can learn more if you go to discoverindiefilm.com or at DIFwins on social media. I did mention Film Invasion Los Angeles. We hold that festival every June. You can learn more at filminvasionla.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. And the last thing I should mention is the Indie Channel. It's an effort to see if we can get independent films to a viewing public and have the filmmakers of those films be rewarded for it. It is a bit of a socialist experiment where the gross receipts are shared evenly among all the filmmakers, regardless of clicks, views, completions. Everyone who contributes to it deserves to benefit from it. What I didn't mention in the previous podcast was that, of course, the dirty secret of indie film distribution is if someone makes an indie film and it somehow gets to the public, that filmmaker is guaranteed to not see a penny. Someone else will be reaping all the benefits. So, fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I certainly ask people to check out indiechannel.tv is the website. And if you're a smart TV user, it's on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Android television, and your mobile phone. So that's called the Indie Channel. Peter, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you for having me on. I had a great time.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Cases.